everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to give you 5 tips for starting your class. So these tips are mostly aimed towards new teachers or teachers who are struggling with routines and things like that. If you're a veteran teacher, this may not help you as much, but this is definitely a video for newer teachers, so let's get into it. Alright, so the first tip I have for you is to make sure the students know that they're seen. So some schools might require all teachers to be at the door when students walk in. Our school currently requires that. The school I was at previously also required that, and the one before that did not. So it really depends on what school you're at, whether or not it's required. Even if you're not at a school which requires you to stand outside the door, I suggest it. I think it's really important for you to be standing by the door as students walk in. That way you can actually talk to them, say good morning, say hello, ask them how their day's going, or things like that. Just build some small conversation with them at the door. That way they know that you see them. It's really important to actually get the students to realize that you see them, you notice that they're there, and it really helps you build relationships with the students. A lot of times teachers will kind of forget about the quiet student. There's usually some quiet students that kind of get mixed into the group, and your job is to make sure that those students are seen as well. So you have the louder kids with the big personalities, and you have the really quiet kids who tend to kind of get left behind. But as long as you're at the door, making sure that they're being seen and acknowledging that they're there, saying good morning and calling them out by name, good morning Annabelle, or whatever their name is, it really helps them feel like they are being noticed, and that not only helps you build the relationships, but it kind of calms the whole environment of your classroom because they know that you're watching. One thing that I do here is that when teachers are over by the door, they aren't able to actually see what's going on in their classrooms. So by talking to the student and saying good morning, things like that, just doing like small talk as they walk in, the student gets an idea of, okay, I'm seen, I'm in the classroom now, although she's not looking at me right now, I have to be wary of what I'm doing here. So that kind of makes sure the student knows, like, I can't go and do something in the corner or yell out the window or whatever that is. It kind of ensures that the student knows, I see you, I understand that you're here and you have a job to do, so please make sure you go straight to your seat and get that job started. So that is tip number 1, is make sure that your students know that you see them. Even if you choose not to stand by the door and say good morning to students as they walk in, even if you're in your classroom, maybe putting away your Chromebooks or cleaning up work or collecting work out of the turn-in bin, I think it's really important that once the kids are in the classroom, you say good morning, you get to small talk or ask them how their day is. That way they can really get a feel for how you are feeling that day, you can get a feel for how they're feeling that day, and you can kind of just change the climate right there. So if a kid comes in really angry, you're able to take that time for a little bit of small talk. Hey, what's wrong? Like, what happened? Not only are you building that relationship, but that student feels like, okay, you know that I'm here, and I know that you're watching, I know that you care, you're interested in what's going on, so I'm gonna help you out by doing whatever task I need to be doing right now. Tip number 2 is to be consistent at the beginning of class. That consistency really helps the students know, if you're not here, what do I have to do? If you're doing a journal at the beginning of class every single day, do it every single day, and they'll start to realize, hey, class just started, I just got in here, I took my seat, now I know, because we've done it every day, I gotta do my journal. Definitely stay consistent at the beginning of class. If you wanna change things later on, like throughout the day, throughout the period, definitely change them, but I think the beginning of the class needs to be consistent. Just because if you're not here and there's a sub and they don't know what to do, they're literally waiting to be told what to do. So if you have a journal at the beginning of class or a planner check or something like that, they know and they're waiting. So definitely be consistent. Number 2 is actually something that I think is one of the most important things, is to have whatever you're doing, your daily tasks, your agenda, whatever you're doing for the day, listed up on the board. Now, I don't use the whiteboard very much. As you can see, it's kind of more like for demonstrations or lectures. If I'm talking about something and I think a picture would help, I'll draw something or I'll write it out. But for me personally, since I don't use the whiteboard very much for writing tasks down, I actually have a slideshow that has everything that we're doing that day, and I have it projected for the students. Now, I really suggest using a slideshow because not only can you save everything that you have throughout that period or that quarter or even that year, you can use it next year. I think the slideshow is a whole lot easier to just flip through for each task. So if a student walks in, I'm gonna start off with what we're going to be doing that day. I'm gonna tell them all the tasks that we have for today. I'm gonna tell them the objective. I'm gonna tell them all that stuff at the beginning of class. Then after I'm done with that slide, I can just switch to the other slide. So for me, I usually start off with a journal. So I have my students writing. I do teach English, so I get the students writing as much as I can. So I put the journal up on the board and give them about 5 minutes to actually read what's on the board in the journal and then write their response. So we start off with the tasks, which I have every single day at the beginning of the period. So at my school, we only have 3 minutes for our passing period. So sometimes I might project the to-do list again or the task list again at the end of the period, just so it's prepared for the other kids as they walk in. Right after that, I switch over to our journal. Now, the journal I think is really important, not just to get students writing and get them working on their creativity in terms of writing, but it helps me get through the first 5 minutes of class. It gives me time to collect homework. If you collect cell phones, which I personally do, I collect all cell phones at the beginning of the period. It gives me time to get the cell phones collected. It really gives me that 5 minutes to kind of get everything in order for the class period. So I really suggest using a slideshow. Definitely have all of your tasks in a slideshow, or even on the board if you don't want to do a slideshow. Have everything projected for them so that they're not only going to know what they're doing, but they have an idea of what they have to do exactly at that moment as they walk in. This will also eliminate the question of, what are we doing today? If you're a teacher, you know you get that question about 5 times per day minimum. What are we doing today? As long as you have your tasks, your agenda, whatever it is you're doing, projected on the screen or on the board somewhere that's very visible to the students, they won't have that question. Or if they do have that question, because sometimes they do anyways, just point to the board. You don't even have to say anything, it's up there. Just point to the board. Point to the board. Also, the students will get kind of into that routine, just looking at the board to see what they're doing, and they can just get started on their work immediately. Tip number 3 is to use a timer for each of your tasks. So I personally don't have like one of those old school timers. I know that there are teachers here who do. There's one teacher who uses one that's shaped like an apple. There's one who uses like literally a kitchen timer. It doesn't matter what timer you use, as long as you're using some kind of timer. Since I don't have an old school one, I use my phone. My phone works just as well as the others. In fact, I think it's actually a little bit easier, so I can manipulate the time that I'm giving them, and it's just a whole lot easier for me. So as the students are walking in, they know that they're going to look at the agenda, we're gonna go over the task, and then I'm going to give them 5 minutes to write their journal. So the journal changes every day, and it is in that slideshow that I talked about. So the students already know the first 5 minutes, you need to be writing a journal. So they come in, they get their journals, and then they begin writing. That's just normal in my class. It gives them the time to write, and it gives me the time to get everything in order and ready for the period with handouts, collecting homework, all stuff like that. So definitely use a timer. The timer is not only good just for the beginning of class, it's actually really good for all of your assignments that you have, your classwork, anything like that. As long as you're moving from task to task, I think it's important to have a timer so that kids can actually get an idea of how long they have. So you don't want to give a kid too much time to do an assignment, because they're going to wait until the last minute or the last day to do it. You also don't want to give them, you know, too little of time, because they're not going to have enough time for it. So what I do is I actually manipulate the time when I need. So I will give them maybe 10 minutes for a certain task, and I'll ask where everyone is. I'll see where they're at after that 10 minutes. And then if they need a little more time, I'll see, like, if there's half the class who needs time, I'll give them a little more time. So it's a little bit easy for me, not just to keep track of people who are doing their work, but it's easy for the students, because they can get an idea of how much time they have, so they can work faster, they can work slower. It's, you know, it helps both sides. One of the most important things that I suggest for a timer is projecting it. If you actually go on Google, you can actually search a timer. Like, you can actually look up a timer, and there's different apps and different little things that you can do to set a 10-minute timer, and at the end of that 10 minutes, there's like this Big Ben clock that will, or grandfather clock that will project, and you'll hear the giant chimes. So I really suggest projecting it. If you want, you can even use your phone, and then I personally have an Elmo, so I could put my phone underneath the Elmo so they can project and see the time too. I think that having it projected for the students, they're able to look at how much time is passing and how long a minute really is. So if I say you have 3 minutes left, they can see that there's 3 minutes, and they can kind of see how fast it goes with their eyes. I think visuals are so important these days. Kids learn better when they're seeing something. And when they see the time go down, they start to realize, oh crap, I only have 3 minutes. I gotta get this done. So definitely use a timer. Another tip I have for you is that you should use class calls or countdowns. Honestly, I was so surprised how much of a difference this makes. If you're waiting for kids to clean up or finish a task, even if there's a timer on the board, a countdown really makes a big difference. The simple 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. it makes a huge difference. Kids know, like, oh my gosh, I have 5 seconds. So even if that's just they're talking and I need them to be quiet, I can just start my countdown, or we can do some kind of class call so that they know that I'm waiting for them to stop talking and I can get my instructions out. Definitely try out class calls as well. There are timers and class calls, the 5, 4, 3, whatever. Or you can do a class call like one that my friend John actually made at his middle school was, I'm gonna say boom shakalaka, and they're gonna say shakalaka boom. So they'll hear me, and then they'll say it back, so then everyone stop talking after that shakalaka boom, and then that's it, it's all quiet. So you can begin with your instructions or whatever it is you have to say. Countdowns, if you don't like to do the boom shakalaka and things like that, you can do 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. That's not very exciting to me. But the countdown definitely works. Try out 5, 4, 3, and continue, and then they'll get the idea. It's like, oh, okay, we gotta look forward, we gotta pay attention. Or even just counting down for the timer. If they have 5 seconds, you can just give them the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they'll just get that idea of, oh, it's a countdown, I only have 5 seconds, I gotta get this last sentence in, or whatever it is. When you are using a timer, I think it's important to give students incentives to actually finish their work on time. So for me personally, I will give them a stamp. So this is the stamp that I have. It was actually a custom stamp that I had made at Staples, so you can just do that online and pick it up in the store. So if students finish their work on time through the timer, I will just go around and I will stamp their page. And this stamp has my name on it. I personally like my name on it so that no one can really recreate it or buy one. Technically they can recreate it, but they have to have it personalized like mine. It just makes it easier because kids aren't going to, you know, go out and buy this. I sometimes also use other ones that are like stamps of animals, but I find that those are really common. But any type of stamp will do. Stickers I've heard sometimes work too, but I feel like those are too much of a hassle for like a timer. So definitely get a stamp and give them that stamp as an incentive to get their work done on time. So countdowns and class calls definitely help. Great tip that I would give you. Alright, so we went over some tips on how to start your class, and this last tip I have for you is to help make sure it is productive. So I know that a lot of teachers have assigned curriculum that they're supposed to teach, and teachers actually make up their own curriculum to kind of add in there, or some teachers just make up their entire own curriculum. I love to make my own curriculum because I feel like there's so much that is being taught that kids can't really relate to. I know that especially in English, there's a lot of things that they try to make relatable for students, but for my specific demographic, it's hard for them to relate to a lot of the stuff that we do, a lot of the stuff that we have to read and all that stuff. So I personally love making my own curriculum. So my tip for you is to make sure that your curriculum is relevant, or make sure the students are in any way able to connect to the content that you're teaching. So if I'm teaching Shakespeare or something, the kids may be like, why are we learning this? This isn't even interesting. I don't even care what happened in, you know, however long ago. I personally like to use pictures that are a little more relevant. So I actually found a picture of William Shakespeare, and he's like kind of more modernized. So what would he look like if he were here today? He has tattoos everywhere. He has like this tiny little beard and this curly little mustache. He's wearing a fedora. There's lots of different things you can add to whatever you're teaching to make it more interesting for the students. Another way is to take things from pop culture and bring them into the class that relate to whatever you're teaching. So for me personally, I teach figurative language every single quarter. I think it's so important in an English class for students to learn and know the different types of figurative language. So I will give them examples from like music videos or movies or TV shows or things that they've actually seen and that they're very familiar with. So if I'm going to play a song by Katy Perry, you're able to make that connection and understand, oh, that's a simile or that's a hyperbole or anything like that. They can understand that, you know, the stuff I'm teaching, it's actually like I get it. It's relevant to me. So this is why I should care. I think it's really important for any teacher to make sure students understand why they are learning whatever they're learning. Not only does it increase the students' interest in learning, it helps them understand, you know, we have to learn this because here it is, like this is what it's like in a music video, so this is what you're learning right now, so you need to learn this so everyone can kind of be on the same page, or I don't know, you get the idea. So always ask yourself, how can I take this content and, you know, make it relatable for the students? How can my students connect to this? If they can't connect to it, they can't relate to any of it, I think that you should find something to add to it so that they can. For my specific demographic, we do get kids who go to college. However, most of them would rather go straight to a career. So I do not preach college. I don't tell students you have to go to college. Instead, I tell them all of their options. If you don't want to go to college, you can go to this trade school. You can just go to this career. You can learn these skills on your own. You can go learn these skills from any other type of person, anything like that. Even YouTube itself teaches me so much. So I teach kids, you know, college isn't the only path that you can take. There's a lot of different paths. And I think it's really important to make sure that they know all these different paths. All right, so those are my 5 tips for you for not only starting your class, but making sure it is a productive class, a productive period, and a productive day. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
You're keeping me on